Etc. Hey YouTube, Aiden/BurgerBob here today to talk about the Besson new standard 3-valve compensating euphonium. So I got this, I got a little video, I got it in my video about my new toys, and I've played it a fair amount since I got it. Not enough to do a trial by fire kind of thing. I probably won't have a chance to play this in like a real setting for quite a long time, so thought I'd just make a video right now, kind of comparing this and my other euphonium, my 842. So already off the bat, in my last video, I was like very clear that this is a euphonium and not an American baritone. Just a quick history slash organology lesson. There we go. That's the history of instruments. Baritones, actual like British baritones, are cylindrical instruments. They're kind of like a scaled up trumpet. They're like a valve trombone-ish, facing this way obviously, not forwards. Not exactly the same, but they are cylindrical instruments. They're not conical like a euphonium. Euphoniums are conical instruments. Over here, these are conical. And in the middle we have the American baritone in the middle, which is kind of like halfway in between. It's a little smaller than modern euphoniums, and bigger than traditional baritones. Those are the kind of instruments you typically see with a bell front kind of setup. They'll have valves on the front over here, you know, like it'll be flipped around, it won't be like this. It won't have valves like this typically, even though I guess there's probably a couple American baritones like this. In any case, this is not an American baritone, it is not a British baritone. This is a full-size actual euphonium. Now I've got that out of the way. This is euphonium, not a baritone. This has a medium shank receiver, not large shank, not small shank. Medium shank was used on lots of euphoniums, including until today, Wilson's. Someone else uses medium shank too, I think. And that's just kind of a standard thing. I think some American baritones also use medium shank, but much more rarely. They're usually small shank. So there we go, that's a good indicator. It uses a medium shank and not small. And the bore size throughout is pretty large. I actually don't know what it is because I don't think there's any way of knowing unless I asked somebody. It's not as large as my Yamaha euphonium, which I think is 571 at the start. I'm actually not sure, I've never looked that up. I think it's just a little bit smaller, but it's not a lot smaller. If I check out the bows, if you look at all the tubing on both instruments, it's basically the same size throughout the instrument. I've checked like the valve slides against each other. I think the Yamaha looked bigger, but only in the outside diameter, not the inside one, and the inside one is the one that matters. They're pretty much the same bore throughout the instrument. I think the Yamaha has a slightly larger valve, so maybe it's a little more open. Obviously it's a little larger in the bell at the end. If you look at that big old ferrule right there until the end of the bell, it's just a little larger through there. And actually the bells are the same size at I think 12 inches. And it's not fun to hold both of these with one hand each. In any case, these are not that different size of instruments. And the Yamaha's about as big of a euphonium as it gets. I think the Miraphone is probably the only one that's like, or maybe a Hirschbrunner, just a little bit larger in kind of tiny ways. So, large euphonium, large euphonium. They're both large euphoniums. The fact that it has 3 valves means nothing. That means literally nothing. People like to standardize like, oh, baritones have 3 valves, euphoniums have 4. The standard compensating baritone in England has 4 valves. What you gonna do about it? And there's plenty of euphoniums, including this one, that only have 3. And we'll get to the other interesting part right now. So my Yamaha here, and the Besson is super awkward to put down. The Yamaha is 4-valve compensating. So the first 3 valves, they just do what they do. If you press all 3 of them down, it's just super sharp. 4th valve, if you press it down, puts everything through another set of tubing that's on the back. I have a video about this from about 11 years ago where I talked about compensating euphoniums versus non-compensating euphoniums. Of course, the advantage is you have a full chromatic range. Technically, you have a full chromatic range, even though low B is pretty sharp. And you don't have to use any weird fingerings. You just use the same ones that you usually use when you play. Great, 4-valve compensating, that's what this is. This is 3-valve compensating. So instead of 4th valve having extra tubing, 1st and 2nd valve just do what they do. If you press down both, they're maybe a little bit sharp because 1 and 2 is kind of a sharp combo. When you press down 3rd valve, ta-da! Now everything is sent through an extra set of tubing that is a little harder to see because it's smaller. Little guy here, and you can see on the front we got this beautiful swoop of the 3rd valve slide. So the air goes through here, then comes through here, and goes through this extra set of tubing. I really love the look of this swoop. You can see it on sax horns, which are popular in France, modern compensating baritones, etc. Just love how that looks compared to the usual just super long 3rd valve slide. What a beautiful curve. So that means that instead of 1, 2, 3 being sharp, it is basically straight up in tune compared to this. Very, very sharp, like 35 cents sharp. I can play it, of course, with 2 and 4. That's actually sometimes a little flat. Also not a great combination. So all those notes in the staff that you always have to worry about, B natural, B, C, are just basically perfectly in tune. The problem I have with this instrument right now is that the 3rd valve has a leak at some point in its tubing or the valve itself. I'm really not sure. If you pull the slide, you can hear like just the air kind of whistling through pretty quickly. And of course this needs to be super solid. It needs to be in alignment or else the whole thing just kind of doesn't play very well. And the biggest example of this is F sharp. Which is about 35 cents flat because the air is leaking out somewhere and it's not sealing and it's just not getting a great pathway for that air. So right now this thing is kind of unusable just because the F sharp doesn't work. The low notes B and C, though they're not perfect, they don't center perfectly, they are usable. But that F sharp, you kind of need F sharp. I would love to play B low on this. But the 2nd note is so flat that it's basically unusable. So I'm going to take this in, I'm going to get it looked at by Rob Stewart. Maybe he can do something, maybe he can't. I don't know if you guys can see this, and I'll talk about the valve caps in a second, but it looks like the 3rd valve cap is different, because it is. And it also looks like the stems on these valves are different, because I cannot swap these valve caps. They have different threads. So this valve might not be original. I'm really not sure. I don't know what else it would be from that has a compensating 3rd valve that's this size, because the baritone wouldn't be this size. I'm really confused as to why that's different. So about the valve caps, they are the worst valve caps in the history of the universe. Okay, so the Yamaha has just your stock, really cool, you know, gold, because they're fancy, gold valve caps with the pearls on the top. They're nice and wide, they're nice and large, very comfortable, Never had a problem with these. None of them have impacted yet. That's great because I haven't played it enough. This, Besson has these silly, tapered, spear-like valve caps that are so uncomfortable to play. I cannot tell you how uncomfortable it is to play these things. First and second are not acceptable, but at least they're larger than third, which is even smaller. This is, it's smaller than the pad on my pinky finger. I mean, I can't even express just how tiny it is. So I actually play this with crappy valve technique with my hand over the valves, just so I can get some more surface area. If I play like this, it actually starts to like poke into my fingers. Whoever came up with that design is wrong. That is just bad design. I'm thinking about maybe getting some replacements. I don't even know if that's possible. I can live with them, but I'd rather not. It's really, really uncomfortable and not fun to play like this. As for the rest of this instrument, the build quality is, I wouldn't say impeccable, but it's so overbuilt, it's ridiculous. This horn, it's not super heavy. It's lighter than my Yamaha because it has so much less tubing and just stuff on it, and it's a little bit smaller. But it's so freaking thick. I mean, this bell, I don't know if you can hear that, but it's like armor plate. It is so thick. Of course, it has this giant collar on here because it is a bell front model. I've unscrewed these all the way. And now they're stuck. There we go. I can do this. I promise. There we go. Look at the thickness of this part. No, you're not this is not like just a little bit of thickness in one part. It's that thick all the way around through the whole collar. And then to the bell. It's still this thick. Look how thick that is. That's you could bounce bullets off of that. I'm not even kidding. And no, I have not played it like this because it would just be super sharp and it would sound really bad. Go back on. I am kind of a little sad that this is bell front because it is a little less useful. But honestly, it's not that big of a deal. If anything, if I want to spend a bunch of money on this, I might have an upright bell made by Wessex or somebody. And I want to show you guys, if you guys can see it, this really cool engraving on here. It's kind of hard to see in this light, at least on this camera. Really cool kind of Art Deco-y, not really, but just a really cool engraving with the Besson and all this stuff. And it's on the side of the bell, not on the top, because that's where you're going to see it, is right here rather than on the top. So there we go, guys. Just a quick, 15-minute video about my silly Besson 3-valve compensating euphonium. Am I going to use this a lot? Probably not, but I'm going to noodle on it a lot. And if I get it fixed, I might actually get to use it in a serious setting. Hope you guys enjoy. See you guys next time.